Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're going to talk sales recruiting in 2023. This is a topic that I think is near and dear to almost everybody's heart here who has a sales organization, who has got on the phone call here today. It's a constant, whether it's a revolving door or it's just a growth mode that you're trying to kind of put your business in for this year. Recruiting good people in times where it's where to look and how to find them and how to recruit them and, how to compensate them and how to pay them, and structuring is just, there's so many questions here. So again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat panel. But without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Nathan Tebedo. He is with Contractor Coach Pro in Top Rep. But Nathan, tell us a little about yourself.
So you are correct. I am Nathan Tebedo. And I am one of the coaches over at Contractor Coach Pro, working directly with our coaching team and our clients, helping them to build their businesses. That's the core of what Contractor Coach Pro does. We have coaching is the central component of who we are and what we do. On top of that, we do speaking and education, and we create content. We have a podcast called Contractor Radio, so give us a little check out. And then we also have a system or an event that we call Top Rep. And Top Rep is a sales training event that we do every single year. As a matter of fact, our first one this year is coming up in February, the end of this month. So actually just a few days out, I guess, like right there at the end of the month, 27th and 28th. So, and I kind of, for Contractor Coach Pro and Top Rep, I kind of move my way through all of those different areas. I work with all the different things that we produce. I do still do some coaching and work with some clients. I will be out at the Top Rep event. I've been in the contractor and contracting industry for 27 years at this point. And so I've done just about everything you can imagine, including, having my own company for 11 years. So yeah, it's a little bit of who I am.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here today and blessing us with your knowledge here. So without further ado, I'm just going to dive into the questions here for you. So
yeah, let's go.
Again, sales recruiting is hard no matter what year it is, but let's talk kind of starting off, just what are the top companies doing to recruit the best sales reps in 2023? What do you see that's the kind of best practices out there this year?
I think there's going to be two really big things well, I should just say this. It really depends on what model you're trying to approach. Because there are a lot of companies that still very much utilize recruiters. They outsource this recruiting concept. They get a lot of candidates in. So there's companies that do that. There are companies that have their recruiting done more in-house. There are companies that, so in that regard, that component probably hasn't changed too much. There's lots of strategies you can use, and many of them are still effective today. The level to which you recruit probably is going to be a reflection of the vision you have for your company and your overall goals and where you're trying to get and what you can handle. Please don't forget that. A lot of people go after the revenue and then discover that they couldn't actually do what it is they sold. So careful on that one. But one of the things I think that is critical and maybe kind of difficult to do in some cases, if you think about the way that your company is using social media to bring your value, your brand, and your company to the world in a real broadcasted message to folks, real powerful companies, real top companies are doing the same thing for recruiting. They have a recruiting brand, they have a recruiting message, and they might even have a whole separate or a whole division of their marketing department whose job it is to market jobs at their company. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So not only do they put out videos and information about what they're doing and where they're at as a company, but they're also putting out information of what it's like to be in and work for that company.
Well, I think that is an interesting perspective when when there's lots of jobs that are out there and posted, for candidates to apply to, it's how do you differentiate yourself from the other companies that are in the space? And if you can share like a cultural video or thing, like events that you're doing internally, it's like you're sharing that for your prospective like customers to, get them to actually become a customer of yours. But you're kind of saying that marketing department, they're using their marketing department to put recruiting, the same kind of marketing towards recruiting.
Well, if you think
Or a little
about
bit.
those social media audiences you build,
Yep.
you can create a different audience and then create different content, different ads pointed at people who you'd like to recruit versus people who you'd like to bring in as a customer.
Yep, absolutely. So I think with that being said, I mean, with, I think companies can overthink that here too. If you're a big company, you have a marketing department and you've got maybe some resources that you can delegate over to that. What are some simple things that maybe you've seen smaller companies as they're hiring 2 reps or 3 reps, this season? What can they do to kind of mimic that, even if they don't have marketing resources to kind of, do that?
So if you guys were on the last webinar that we did, you'll notice something about me is I tend to go back to the beginning and try to move forward toward the future. So one thing I would keep in mind is that I am going to refer to your marketing strategy, and you need to think about this concept. I'll give you an example of this. Are you hiring for skill, or are you trying to build skill? Those are 2 different tactics. If you're hiring for skill, in other words, you want to bring in the top reps, you're looking for excellent salespeople who are already salespeople, different strategy than being a company that can turn them into a top rep. Different strategy.
It depends on who are you? What methods are you going to use to actually market and get those candidates in the door? It's going to be vastly different.
If your company, my seat was sinking down. If you tool your company to be able to create top reps, it changes the nature of the net you throw into the world. I can throw a much broader net if I'm less worried about their current sales acumen. Does that make sense? Now I start to become a little more concerned over whether they have the personality or whether they have the traits or attributes that I'm looking for. I'm worried less about the skill. But if you are looking for that skill, you want to bring, and there's pluses and minuses to doing both. One of them tends to be a little bit more expensive on the front end. One's a little more expensive on the back end. And, like I said, pluses and minuses, dealing with inexperience versus dealing with experience. And that experience isn't always good.
Yep.
Right.
Well, I'm curious, what's your right? If you were jumping in and recommending to a company, what would be better? I mean, because I think there's like you said, there's pluses and minuses with somebody who's already an experienced sales rep in the industry. They come with their own baggage of how they sell and how they, do things. And you're kind of putting them into a team versus hiring somebody completely green, doesn't know anything, and then you're teaching them everything. There's investment there, but there's also a risk there because they might learn all that you have to teach them and they go, this isn't for me and I'm out of here. I think everyone's experienced that too. So, I mean, those are the 2, kind of, just in a very high level nutshell. So what would be your recommendation, or is there one that would be better than others?
I think it's about you. So once again, I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to say it's about your vision and it's about your core values and your culture. If you are a fairly large business already, then you may have the resources to be able to take the risk on training some of those folks. Okay. And then, you can actually bring people up from any stage. But oftentimes those big companies want to ramp up quickly, and sometimes they don't want this. Honestly, I don't think there is a right answer to this. It's more about your personality and what you want to do. I like the idea of the inexperience. I like the idea of somebody who is fresh. They don't have preconceived notions. They don't have expectations. They're strong. They're healthy. They're hungry. They want to get out and do something. Generally, they're a little younger. I like that component myself. Then I'm looking for a culture match, and I'm looking for attributes and skills. Looking for attributes. The skill thing, I can measure their skills, but the degree to which their skills rank is the degree or the time it's going to take to get me, or for me to get them to productive.
Yep.
So in other words, if you hire somebody who has the attributes and skills, or has the attributes and they're a good cultural fit, great. You know that they can do the job.
Yeah.
Then where they fall on the skill metric is going to decide how long it's going to take for you to get them to productive. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I like the inexperienced thing only because just the general youth and lack of expectation. You talk to salty old sales folks, and I tell you, some of those folks, they are good people, good stories, and they can be very, very skilled. They also can be a little jaded. Just go on any salesperson Facebook group and just watch them talk.
Well, I think, yeah, there's preconceived things that, that they feel like have worked in previous roles that they'll kind of bring back in, even though it's not in the alignment with the culture, the values that the company has. Just like you said, there has to be some guardrails that are in place, whether you hire experienced or inexperienced, no matter what. So you have people kind of still rowing in the right direction. So
Well, you did ask me about the smaller company. Okay. So
yes.
lack of, maybe they don't have all the resources that some bigger company has, but they do want to try and bring aboard a few people.
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing to keep in mind is, what is the reason for doing it? Because I'll tell you this right now, if you're a small business person out there listening to this right now, let's say you're a 1 or 2 man operation, or a 1 gal operation, you're very, very small. Your time is the most valuable thing that you have, and you don't have very much of it. So when it comes time to hire some people, and I will scream this from the mountaintops, if you are that small and you're looking for the biggest return on investment for a new hire, salespeople are the last ones you want to hire.
100%. Yeah.
They take the longest amount of time to get trained. And even once they're trained, they take the longest amount of time to accomplish the thing that you hired them to do. Because you're either hiring them to replace some of the revenue you generate, or you're hiring them to increase the revenue that you're doing while not costing you any more time. They are the worst investment for doing that. Just so you know. And that's not a knock on salespeople. It is a tricky, difficult job.
Yep.
So just say that to begin with. But if you're just looking to hire a couple of people, when it comes to the recruiting side, I gotta be careful about getting too deep into training. When it comes to the recruiting side and you're looking for 1 or 2 people, your own network and your own current team are the most fertile ground to find 1 or 2 people. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter what position you're trying to hire for. Doesn't matter what position you want to hire an additional admin. You're looking for somebody to help out on your production side. You want somebody to help maybe take care of some of your social media, your marketing stuff, or you're trying to hire a couple sales reps. The people who work around you are they say that the average person has about a 100 human being sphere of influence. About 100 people. Now, you may not know those people intimately, but you know them well enough to know their name, their spouse's name, their kid's name, maybe where they live, a little of their history. About 100 people. If you have 10 people working at your company, or even if you have 5, that's 500 people who your people actually have something of a direct influence on.
Yep. Start there first.
Number 1, right out the gate, and it's free.
Well, especially if you're looking for people who don't necessarily have the experience, but that the people on your team, especially if you respect the people on your team and they have a good idea of what you're looking for, they can pinpoint the people that they feel like they know that would fall into that, into that role if you can define it. So I think that's a huge additional kind of screen right there in that whole process.
I agree.
So I think,
your people are probably not going to try and recruit somebody they don't want to work with.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like them. They're in my sphere of influence, but I thought I'd invite them in anyway. No, that's awesome. So going to just on the flip side, so obviously training and getting in somebody inexperienced, you teach them from, ground zero to, or maybe even take them from a different industry, but they don't know home improvements. You're training them on the home improvement selling system and selling process, which is a different methodology than hiring someone who is experienced. So Maddie asked here too, is just what's the best method that you found for taking an experienced sales rep and helping them buy into the current methodology? that you currently have. So if it's different there, I think that is a, I think if you go the other route, what's the it's the best path for compliance, or kind of get them all rowing in the same direction?
So the very first thing, 100%, Rick kind of made a mention, hire for character. The first thing you're gonna be looking for is a cultural fit. Okay, there's got to be a cultural fit that they exhibit and have similar values, and they jive with what you're doing, because then
Yep.
they probably will be willing to bend a little bit. Like
Yep.
if you think about spending time, let's say you just met somebody and you don't really like that person, you don't really click that much, and you're not jiving, right? How much are you going to go out of your way to spend time with that person, or how much sacrifice are you going to make to really get invested in that person you just don't really like and you don't click with? The answer is zero.
Yep.
Okay. So that cultural fit has got to be number one. Then number two, I think, being able to cast a bit of a vision so that they can see the bigger picture. Because oftentimes we don't want to do something, or we don't want to do a new thing because we don't understand what the effect or the reason for that thing might be. And you say, hey, well, in this industry or in this trade, we do things like this. And they go, well, that's not how I do things. And they say, well, you need to be able to say, well, but here's the bigger picture. Because if you don't do this thing here, then what happens is down the road, we deal with this thing here.
Yep.
Okay. So that component. And then documentation. I think so many people, they think that their people are giving them resistance because they didn't do what they told them to. But the problem is you told them, you didn't show them and then give them a utility or a tool that they can follow.
Yep.
So if you're bringing over an experienced person from another place, I mean, I'm having a step-by-step system laid out for them that's written at a 6th or 7th grade level, right? So that not because they're dumb, but because I just don't want to leave any room for error. And you know what that person will probably say? If they were the right cultural fit and you give them a tool like that, they're going to be like, thank you. I've got a path to follow. So that make sure that you have that in place, and then those checks and balances, right? Those you can't wait for them to screw up a bunch of times and then come back angry at them. We need to have a continual check-in. We need to inspect what we expect. And so we need to have methodologies for following and making sure that they have made that conversion over to a way that we do things. And if they're struggling in some areas, we get those things corrected early rather than frustrations building.
Yeah. I think the issue I see most when, like, I feel the pain of this question from companies who they have a high performing sales rep, who's maybe bringing in let's say they bring in $1 million in business, but they kind of are off on this own little island. And then there's the rest of the sales team, that happens. And then it's, whether it's ownership or people, like they don't want to let go of the $1 million in revenue that they see over here with this person who's doing their own thing. But they want a sales methodology and they want a system around that. And I think it all comes down to, like, you got to make the choice at some point, whether, like, what's the vision? What's the why behind all of it? And if you want everybody to be on the same page, then everyone's got to be on the same page. And it has to be, just like you mentioned, you have to share the vision of why and why we do it this way, because it actually impacts the customer, or it impacts, all the different departments, so we can deliver a quality product that we actually want to deliver. And so I think just like you said, that vision is huge in that components.
The belief in your change is critical, though. I mean, if you're just making a change to make a change, because here's the thing: if you've got a team of sales reps and you got that one guy who's just like the top of the heap, okay, they're all looking at the way that person does things, thinking that is the way to do them.
Yep.
Okay. Or I'll tell you this, that person, because they like being at the top of the heap, is also likely to sabotage somebody else because he doesn't want any competition up there. Very, very rarely have I seen a company who is dealing with a rep who's on what Chuck Toki would call the pedestal. Very rarely have I seen a company that has a rep on the pedestal get rid of that person and then suffer for it. Generally, what happens is, if we hit that roadblock and that person just is refusing to acquiesce to what we're trying to do as a company that we know we need to do, When that person is now gone, that toxicity has been removed, and
Yep.
everybody else will tend to rise. So now all of a sudden, I'll tell you right now, I'd rather have 4 reps producing 800 than 1 doing 1 million and the rest of them doing 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think, and then you can, yeah, you set an expectation and you rise together, not one who is, disproportionately out there as well.
Right.
So I think that proves the sales system actually is working when you have your whole sales team is growing, not just one, that's way out there. So I love that. I mean, Rick, just to throw out there specifically on this question, is you had mentioned advertising to auto sales consultants because they have, I would assume because they have some sales experience already, and then you're training from there. So you're advertising them specifically. So I think even talking about casting a broad net or casting a specific net, it's like you can maybe found a niche there of people that actually are really, really good, for this, that are a good translate of skill to this industry. Because they already had to go through some training and weeding out there to find out they actually like sales and like talking to people and some of those things before just hiring anyone who out there too. So other question here is just what qualities you kind of talked about, kind of making sure that when you're hiring someone who's, let's just dive into the person who's inexperienced right now. So what qualities are you looking for that kind of top in an interview process? Because it's so hard, because salespeople are good at interviewing, right? They're good salespeople, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be good in-home salespeople or even like this, or have the stamina to be able to go even that, like, it's hard to be, the hours are hard. Let's acknowledge that being nights and weekends and in people's homes, that's hard to be away from family, and that not everyone's cut out for that. And then from a just a cultural standpoint, like not everyone's good at relating to a homeowner because they might not even own a home or things like that. So what qualities do you normally look for in that interview process when someone's trying to sell themselves in an interview?
So once again, we go kind of back to the beginning here. You're going to want to start with your processes. I had some notes that I had jotted down. Your processes, your product, and your culture, right? So personality, obviously we've talked a lot about culture. So I'll kind of, hopefully you guys we're on the same page there. But your processes and product, how exactly do you sell, and what is the personality that best fits that sales methodology? So I'll tell you right now, selling in-home alarm systems is different than selling enterprise level software solutions to Fortune 500 companies. Two very, very different. So are those the same salespeople? They may have some crossover. Okay. That's not the same salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly do we expect of them? Or do we lean really hard on one call close? Do we have a little bit longer, more extended sales process? Are they expected to generate their own leads? Are they not? Are they expected to just run run appointments? Are they expected to do follow-up? What are the steps of your sales process? How many of them are there? And what are the attributes that work best for that? So, for example, there's a book out there, and I'll recommend this. It's called The Perfect Sales Force by Derek Gatehouse.
Mm-hmm.
The Perfect Sales Force by Derek Gatehouse, and he dives into some of these questions. The other thing that he does is he dives into how to interview, which is super cool. Okay, because like you just said, salespeople are good interviewers because most of them speak well, and they're good at selling you. That's what we're looking for. We want them to be salespeople. So they're trying to sell you and hiring them. But that's a good book to check out around this subject. So you have to understand that, because it's hard to say what are some basic key factors, right? Is your salespeople can't be too attached to being liked. Because the more attached you are to being liked, the less likely you are to say something that you might need to say in order to help the person in front of you, because you're worried about not being liked. Okay. So things like the length of time you expect them, like how long should they be responsible for a process? Okay. Are they expected to, I mean, if you do, I had a friend of mine that sold windows for a company. He did not generate his own leads. He did not set his own appointments, and he did not do his follow-up. The only thing that he did was run the appointment. That was it. He ran the appointment. The guy he made amazing money just doing that. So the skills and attributes needed from him versus somebody that you want to hold this process for much longer, they're very, very different. So that's why, like, I know that might sound like a non-answer, but you have to start there. You have to look at your sales process. I just want closers. Okay, great. Then you need to have as little on their plate as possible. You can't expect them to build their own leads and generate an order and keep track of their production if your number one thing is closers, because they won't do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're out there going, hey, you know it's true. So that's kind of and I'll tell you this, the more you narrow the sales process to fit kind of traditional sales roles, which is generally presenting and closing, the easier it is to find salespeople, actually. Because the more complicated your sales process and the longer the sales cycle, the more unique the individual is, you need to be able to do that. I worked at a company one time where our average product sales were well over 70 grand per unit. And the average sales cycle was no less than 8 months. And I had deals that took a year and a half. My brother-in-law, he did this really big deal with an organization all of you folks would know, you've heard of. It took him 6 years to close that deal.
Yep.
That is a different kind of salesperson than the one who can get you in the right car you need today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely some industries that are much more related to, like, I'm just going to help this acute, and stay in this specific lane. And if you're good at that one, that sales, like, build rapport instantly, and then be able to take somebody on a journey in a short period of time, that's a relatable skill, that if you're doing that in a different industry and you can do that here, like, and you can narrow that down, is much different than the person who had to go knock the door and then have to, which is a marketing role, or be at a networking event to try to network and follow up with people to get in the door. And like that's a whole nother, like, skill set that you're trying to find in someone who's willing to do all those different pieces and attributes of the marketing and sales. And then if you're asking them to do some production stuff as well, like, they just can't do it. It's now you're looking for a needle in the haystack versus someone who's very regimented.
We call them purple unicorns.
There you
go.
So
if you wanted to figure this out, right, what you need to do is you need to sit down with your job description, with your process for your salespeople. You need to map out, okay, what are the things they need to do? I do expect them to do some biz dev. They need to go out and do some business development. Okay, they need to be a good schmoozer. I'll tell you right now, Chuck Toki from Top Rep, okay, he is a surgical closing machine. Okay. He is not really a big schmoozer. You put him in a cocktail room and expect him to just float around saying hi to everybody and just the center of attention. That's not his jam. He won't. That's not really his thing, but he is fantastic at sales. So do you expect them to do biz dev and lead generation? Do you expect them to be able to document whatever the project is and get that information? So take your sales process and then mark that out, and then begin to think, okay, somebody who can do this, what do those attributes and skills look like? Now, we at Contractor Coach Pro, we have a whole system for helping people do that. And it's kind of complicated, but once you get into doing it, it's actually kind of fun, because it's like Build-A-Bear for a salesperson. Like, who's your ideal salesperson? Let's just build him, right? Well, he's got a hat and he's got glasses, but you do that. And then you begin to look at all of these different attributes and skills you feel like they're going to need. And one of two things are going to happen. A, you're going to have to settle on the one that you're looking for, because sometimes they're a little bit opposed to one another. So you're going to have to settle on the one that you really do think you need, that's the most valuable to you. Then you're going to have to learn how to interview to discover that sale. Okay. Or the other thing you might do is you might go, maybe I should start taking some of this stuff off the sales role plate.
Yep. I think that's, I think with what I'm as you're talking about that, I think of from a marketing standpoint, it's like you create your persona, like what's your ideal customer is. So you go after them and start marketing to them where they're at, and like they're a person from this age group to this age group, and they have like we do that on a like marketing to go acquire a customer, but it's no different on a sales side of things. You have to like
Travis is like typing it as I was saying it. Dividing up salesperson role and SDR, sales development rep, can really help the salesperson stay on the most valuable part of their time. That's exactly correct.
Yep.
And furthermore, the more follow-up responsibilities you give your average salesperson and the more technical responsibilities from a production side and management, the less likely they are to do those things. And
Yeah.
the more likely they are to use those as excuses as to why they're not selling as much as they should be.
Well, if you keep them in their lane, then they can for measurements and all that kind of stuff. You go, well, this is you're handed this. This is your where you kind of hand it off in the production line. That's it's that it allows you to be able to measure each portion of it here too. So many of you, if you're doing one call close and you've kind of had a system set up selling bats, windows, one call close, many of your organizations are already set up that way. So let's kind of dive a little even deeper into that. Based on a couple of questions here, is that Rick had asked and men put in here a couple of questions of like disc profile in relation to kind of testing some of the qualities. That's a very traditional like personality test. And I will just quick preface here, because we do personality profiling and all that kind of stuff. You can't like there's legalities and some of that stuff and like for hiring and in the interview process. But I'm curious your thoughts on like how to use some of those tools, because it is a widely used thing out there. Here is like, is that a good indicator for sales, or is it a good indicator for like top line filtering of people that would be potentially good at sales or more likely to be able to be better?
I think DISC is interesting. And I think that DISC can be helpful. Okay. Especially when you're trying to figure out, like, is this person more likely to care about the task or the person? Okay. Is this person going to be able to, drive the conversation and drive the scenario? DISC is pretty good at telling you some of those things.
Yep.
DISC is not really great at assessing salespeople. I'll say that right now. Now, somebody might be arguing with me, but at least the DISC profiles that I've gone through and that I've taken myself, not a great indicator of whether or not somebody's going to be successful at that. Okay, so I'm going to apologize up front. Okay, I'm going to apologize right now because I don't do this. But the best one that Contractor Coach Pro is actually certified in a salesperson assessment and evaluation platform that has one of the highest predictor levels that I've ever seen for understanding what we want out of our salespeople, and it just has a plethora. And I'm not the one that's actually certified in it, so like my man John would actually be much stronger at being able to communicate what it does and how it works. It's absolutely fantastic. The thing is, it's called OMG, but it isn't something that you can go out and buy. So in other words, you have to find like an OMG certified person to do it. So like I said, I'm not trying to do a commercial, but if you're looking for, you can get out and try to find an OMG licensed or certified I forget what they call them, like a trainer or assessor, and they have tools for being able to measure your own people. Like literally, you can go in and measure, see how the people I have, like how well are they suited for this job, and where maybe do they need some help. And then they also have tools for assessing an incoming person, whether or not this person is going to be good at what they do. So that one is going to cost you a little bit of money. But because I think DISC is free, or at least the initial portion of it. And there's other free assessments out there. Personally, that's kind of my favorite. Contractor Coach Pro, we also kind of built one on our own that we will coach people. So if somebody wants to go through this thing with us, they can. We also have our own. They can go through that with us too. Anyway, there are some tools out there for helping you to assess and predict the ability of somebody to be successful in that role.
Yeah, well, I think there's Yeah, I think just like we talked about it, those people are trying to sell themselves so that you're trying to like weed through the people who are just, that they think they'd be great at it or they like the idea and they've already sold themselves and wanting to be a part of your team because you've done a good job marketing the position to them. So now you're trying to weed them through in that interview process. So yeah, I think assessments can be helpful. Like I'm right there with you. I think DISC can be a good like high level filter, maybe of like personality. Like if you can be if you're good working with people and so you're a driver of that conversation, but it's not a predictor for all sales success. Some people that are just like you had mentioned that Chuck is not. I'm not the one to go into a party, and I'd rather
Work
not just go
room.
to the party. Yeah, work from remote and do this. So but that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you have a different skill set, a way you get there, and
I
it just
met a
fits your
gal.
culture too. So
We did this. We did this experiment at one of our events one time, and there was a gal there who tested as an. She tested as an S, right?
yep,
So S is like the real uh they're like fairly emotional, right? They're also very gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think it's S. S and C are next to each other, right?
hmm
Sorry, it's been a minute. This gal, everybody would think like a D is your ideal salesperson. This gal tests
yeah,
as an S, right? So they're relatable. They don't really like conflict. So oftentimes they can be a bit introverted, like all of those kind of components. She was also tend to be very quiet. She was a $3.5 million a year salesperson. 3.5. Many of you on this call don't have a salesperson who sold that. And so if you'd have gone off a DISC profile, many people would have said she's probably not going to be the right one.
yep,
Yet she's in the top. I mean, for home services, she's probably in the top 10%, top 5%.
yep,
So that's and going back to one thing we talked about earlier. When you look at your sales process and you begin to identify the attributes that they need, that should help to shape the way in which we interview them. So when I know I'm looking for a particular attribute, like let's say, I'm looking for, I'll get a perfect example, right? When you're interviewing somebody and you say, Sean, let me ask you a question. Would you say that you're a hard worker?
of course. Yeah, I
What do you
work.
think Sean's going to say to that? Right? You
No,
know,
like, sometimes yeah,
what would you say is your biggest weakness? Well, I tell you, Nathan, I sometimes I just care too much,
yeah,
you know?
I work too hard.
So that's right. I work too hard. I give too much to the company. So what we need to do
Yep,
is we need to understand the trait that we're looking for, and then build questions to tell stories to ask them and draw those things out of them. So if I want to know how hard somebody can work or what they can, I would ask somebody, what's the hardest you've ever worked before in your life, or what's the hardest work day you've ever had, and then
hmm
I'm going to get that story.
yep,
When they tell me they had a really rough day at Starbucks and they just had 5 or 6 bad customers after another.
yep,
Okay. They had to work a double at the restaurant they're working at. Okay. Or, they had to work a double, finish out 2 papers they were writing, and then also get to class and then finish out the homework for the up and coming day after that. That's a lot, right? So understanding what you're looking for and then developing questions that create a conversational exchange where you can draw things out of them. And they're generally going to look like stories.
hmm So I do. So I want to jump back to Shanice's question here about uh, the skill set that you would look for when in the interview process when hiring kind of a one-time closer or a hard closer on that
So
side.
I'm looking for somebody who can think on their feet. I am looking for somebody who, and once again, so this is going to go back to your culture.
Yep.
Okay. Because we've identified kind of 2 different styles of closers. Okay. You have the hard closer, and hard closers, people think that's what I want. Maybe. Okay. Hard closers can oftentimes be objection done, objection done, objection done. It can be a very adversarial
Yep.
experience for your client. Okay. Then you have soft or assumptive closers. Soft or assumptive closers are people who've been overcoming objections from the moment they knocked on the door and introduced themselves.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who, this is a closing methodology, and we have a component that we call objection defeating questions. From the moment they began talking with that person, they began discovering information about them, asking them questions about their experiences, their desires, their fears, who they are, where they're from, why they need this, how long have they been aware, just they're pulling these pieces out. And then as they present to this person, they're addressing those things as they present their solution.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamentally and ideally, by the time you get to the end of the sale, it's an assumptive close, because there's nothing left there's no stall or objection left. You've addressed them.
Yep.
And if there is, then it's usually because you missed something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking for somebody who listens probably more than they talk. If you want a really good one call closer, somebody who can go back to the things that you said before and tie them to the solution they're bringing, and then create that excitement on the spot. Okay. Now there's all a bunch of stuff that goes into like one-legged appointments and,
Yep.
whether or not they're qualified or actually need your services and all that kind of stuff. But once again, you might have a really aggressive competitive culture where those hardcore, one call closers are there, and they're either getting kicked out of that house or they're making a sale. Some companies have that as a culture, and they actually are okay with and want to hire people like that.
Yep. Well, I think that's kind of where there's even multiple, we talk about one call close versus more of a consultative multiple, call close that, companies do different ways. But even within the one call close, you're saying that there's the assumptive, more consultative, one call close, which could yield a different person who's more of like the consultant type salesperson who's answering, and the sales methodology is leading to the one's call close versus like the more aggressive, which is actually pretty traditional within the industry here, of people who are in the house and they're just not going to leave. And if it's 3 hours, it's 3 hours, and they'll be kicked out of the house if necessary. So, and so that hiring those type of people they have to match it. Like it's a cultural thing to find those kind of aggressive, type there as well. So, yes, I'm curious.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Your primary traits are, first of all, once again, I go back to the beginning, like what's the culture of your company, and what kind of people do you want to be dealing with?
Yes.
Because I tell you, those hardcore closers, they're awesome. I mean, they can really get it done. Is that what you're looking for? Because you can one call close without being that way as well.
Yep.
So,
well, and I think that also, just like to your point, is that before, as you go, if you're having your sales reps do everything, you're looking for a purple unicorn. If you're looking for a hardcore closer who's just going to, be willing to do that, that's also,
you're diluting the skill pool.
Yes.
Is what you're doing.
Yes.
You're diluting you want a hardcore closer. You think that guy's going to know how to put together a work order to submit to production? And then do you think that person's going to be able to stay on top of calling that person to let them know when their job's getting delivered and when their work is started?
No. Yep. Absolutely. So again, we have a couple of people have asked just some good questions to ask to kind of get at to some of these things. Let's just kind of frame up our own, type of personal Build-A-Bear sales rep here. We're looking for a consultative one call close, sales rep who's going to go and be, help that homeowner, build a relationship, build the value in the company, present the price, ask for the sale, and they're going to follow a sales methodology. What are good questions to find someone who's going to have the skill sets to be able to kind of, follow through on our sales methodology that's already in place? So, is that, you talked about the, what's the hardest thing you've done, but what are some other things that have kind of either, like, I'd say just the high level questions that are easy, like, oh, that's not a fit.
Right. So, I would ask them about their relationships. What do you find most difficult about relationships with people? Some people might say confrontation. Some people might say disagreeing. Some people might say, I mean, who knows what they might come up with. I'm looking for somebody who's comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay. Somebody who doesn't mind being challenged. I mean, Sean, why did you wear that sweatshirt today? I mean, we're on a call with like 90 people here and you're wearing a sweatshirt. I mean, why not a collar? Right. See what Sean does with it. Right. Sean may be going, hey, well, I'll tell you why I wore this, because that's who I am and that's my persona. And I get some pushback. I like that. Sean starts attacking me back.
Yep.
Don't like that. Right. So you're looking for somebody who's comfortable being uncomfortable. You're looking to ask somebody, maybe even guide them into a scenario where, what if I set them up? I set them up for offering the right solution versus the one I'm asking for. Because that will take confrontation as well.
Yep.
Okay. People who give you pushback, oftentimes we're not looking for a high level of agreeableness with this person. If they give you pushback, they're fine with telling you that's not true. And you want your people, ultimately you want business dev people, we don't want them like that at all. But our closer person, we want them to be able to tell somebody, this is not a good idea. This is not the right path. So we're looking for a lower level of agreeableness. We're looking for somebody who doesn't, somebody who can tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Somebody who is able to communicate through story, somebody who listens. So as you're talking, they have good cadence, good pause to their speak because they're listening to you. We're looking for somebody who's articulate, and we're probably also looking for somebody who's able to identify the way that we speak and either match it or address it.
So I'm kind of hearing from a few different pieces there. It's like, even as it's almost like the subliminals here too. It's almost, you've got a question, but there's also some underlying pieces of how that interview went that I think we can all like pick up on. That it's like, are they relatable? Because if they're not relatable with you in the interview, they're not going to be relatable with the person in the home. Are they matching your basic cadence? Are they sitting back in the chair when you're sitting back in the chair? Kind of that mirroring type of stuff. That's
got to be careful with body language, because most people don't actually know how to read it very well. So, because they say, because the arms crossed thing. If I'm going like this, or if I'm going like this, right? Or I might be going like this.
Yep.
So then somebody goes, oh, they're closed off because their arms are closed. Nah, that's not necessarily.
Yeah, you can read into it a little bit.
Got to be careful with the body language.
But I think, like it's mentioned in the chat here too, I think as Shemi had mentioned and Rick as well, like there is some of that like character and relatability, and like how do you get at some of those questions as well, that to make sure that that you're going to bring someone in that's going to actually have the character. And then the skill is obviously built off that as well. But, that's, they have to be a good, relatable person who's going to be able to talk and listen what we heard, and then be able to kind of relate with the person and have a general conversation.
So once again, I'm going for questions about their life. So character and relatability, what's the most difficult thing you've ever had to deal with? Right? Well, my grandparents dying, or maybe I lost a spouse, or maybe it's, so maybe it was, college, or what, it was a breakup of some kind. What to you is an ideal day? Like if you could just paint the picture of your perfect day, what does that look like? Okay. Where are you trying? One of the best ones that I know interviewers ask this one, and this is the one that I do agree with, but I think they don't poke at it enough. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And if not 5, how about 3? So I tell you what, if you want to know how to motivate this person, if they can actually answer that question, they're handing you the keys to their motivation. You ask questions like that, and you're asking about character. When is a time that you felt most triumphant?
Yep. They're trying to get at what their value systems are and things like that here too. I think that's a really good way to be able to do that.
And if you want more, ask a little deeper.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
what did you like most about your last job, and what did you like least about it? And if you don't like the answer that you got, ask a little bit deeper question about that thing.
Yes. Well, one of the
What
questions I think is
what
great
makes
is
you think you're
asking.
qualified for this job?
Yep. Yeah, I think that how they answer that is kind of going back to the conflict side of things here too, and putting them on their toes a little bit.
Absolutely.
I think one thing I always is just like, why are you leaving your last position? I think that's a good one to kind of see how that responds, and making them elaborate on that a little bit can help you determine what was a cultural fit and what wasn't at their last job, and how it relates to what you're going to do here. Because I think that's a huge indicator here as
Mm,
well. So that's one thing I've seen with sales reps. Even talking to sales reps who have left companies in the home improvement space, it's not that they're not necessarily a good sales rep, is that they didn't like the work-life balance, or they didn't like just basic things about the position. Not everyone leaves because of the money. They can make good money, but their life didn't align with how this industry operates in home sales. So that's another big component of things. It's like, it's one thing to present a question and go, "Are you okay with working on the nights and weekends?" And they go, "Well, yeah, of course, or I wouldn't, interview here."
right.
But you go ask them, "Well, what do you do on the nights and weekends?" What, like, find out what they're giving up and make them critically think on that. Is another thing that can, you're going to find out, again, value systems and all that kind of stuff, and is in alignment with other people that you're seeing. So Dave asked and said, ask for an athletic mindset. Have they played any sports, been on a team, all that kind of stuff, and been team leader? Have they led? I think that is a great point here too. I
A
think
good
there's,
question. Yeah.
yeah,
Have you
that is,
played sports? I like that question too a lot. And one of the reasons is
yeah.
because which sport they played can have an impact on what you can expect from did this person play
Mhm.
football or baseball or basketball, or did they play golf? Did they play tennis? Right? Did they play a team sport, or did they play a more individual sport?
Yep.
Furthermore, what do they do in their spare time? Do they go out and play team sports? Are they a member of a book club? Do they like to go spend time with people? Or is a guy like, I go up into the mountains hoping to not see another human being for the next 6 hours,
Yep.
right? Yeah, I like to fly fish by myself.
Yep.
Okay. So that's a great call out on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it also points to that, like, again, all these different questions, you can get to the same result. And some of this stuff is going like, what are they doing to better themselves? Like, again, does that fit in with your team culture, who are always trying to get better and improve and find ways to do things differently? That, again, you're trying to find cultural fit by some of the questions that you're asking here too. It could be really great. And I think a great way to do this is almost like, if you take these same interview questions and you ask them of your current sales reps that you want to, like, it's like, what answers would you get?
What would they say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what would they say, and what would steer you, in the right direction? Because sometimes with interviewing, it's like, I feel like you have a limited window of conversation. It's just asking the right questions to get to the right responses there too. So, I know we spent a lot of time on like the tactics here, but that's what this is about. So I appreciate you guys engaging here, and we've got a lot of great questions that have come out of here. So, to be respectful of your time, I want to be able to just dive in. I want to hear your kind of high level thoughts on just where you see kind of sales leadership, kind of sales compensation, kind of sales in general, and even training. As you guys are deep into that stuff, where do you see kind of in-home sales kind of going in 2023 and into the future, from where it's kind of been so far?
So it's a good question because we've got some very interesting technologies headed our way. So on the leadership side, I think maybe you guys have probably heard this before. For some of the newer generations that we have coming, I know people keep talking about millennials. Do you guys know millennials are like getting into their 40s now? Just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Millennials are creeping 40. Okay. So if you're talking about hiring the youth, they're not millennials anymore.
Yeah.
Just be aware. Okay. So it's not about the money anymore. Now,
Mm.
a lot of us go, how could it not be about the money? It's a job. Okay. Here's the thing. There are people making millions of dollars doing dances on a social media platform, or recording themselves playing video games. So if you think about the opportunities that people have today, especially young people, to monetize the thing that they love through technology and social media, it's almost limitless. So imagine growing up knowing that those kinds of people have existed. They post information, they've created a following, that following got monetized, and they make tons of money doing the artwork they like, or doing skateboard training videos. So their concept of the ability to make a lot of money, it's wide open. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, it was like, well, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be in construction, you're going to be in the government. Okay. Are you going to be a small business owner and, ruin yourself eventually? Like, such a stressful job. But these kids see making money as a byproduct of doing something they love. That is a shift in the mentality that's occurred, especially with younger people. They go, I want to do something I love and make a lot of money at it. Why? Because it's possible. So it's not about the money anymore. So as far as leadership goes, it really is trying to find what motivates them and what they're after, and then reverse engineer how you're going to help them get to that thing. And I tell you what, some of these people are going to be with you for, we'll face it, some of these people are going to wash out. It's not the right position for them. Some of these people are going to be with you for 2 years. Some people might be with you for 6 or 8 or 10 years. Probably not, many of them. They're going to be on your bus for a period of time. How can you, if the leadership and hiring component, what does that look like? It looks like showing them a path through your company to getting what they're after. And maybe that path is only 3 years long. Maybe it's only 5 years long, but be willing to accept that. And I tell you what, you develop a reputation of helping people go from zero to their dreams. I don't think you'll ever have a problem recruiting anybody for the rest of your business's life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the leadership and future side, or like sales leadership, there are so many cool things coming out today with regards to ways to lead your folks, tools and technology. I mean, literally, one of our partners is a company called Engage, and they build a presentation platform, and that presentation platform has integrations with a lot of different stuff out there. Okay, but one of the reasons why I bring them up is one of the huge things that their product does is it actually gives you metrics on how long it took for somebody to do the presentation, where they stopped, where they started, what they went past on the presentation. It just gives you data.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a tool out there that exists that, like, people would say, well, I spent a bunch of money building this presentation for my salespeople, and I don't even know if they use it.
Yep.
Well, now we've got metrics and data that'll allow you to know whether they're using it or not, how they're using it, and then you can match the usage of it up to closing percentages of your team. Your best closers, what are they doing? How long are they spending on which slides? And so data. Okay. There's also this component of AI. There's another company out there called Rilla, Rilla. If you haven't heard of them, you need to go look at them now. Rilla. They use AI to manage and track what your salespeople are saying in the house. And so now you, as a sales leader, can literally do virtual ride-alongs with your people. Okay, now we don't have time to go into the weeds of what their product can do. You just need to go look at them. Okay, so these tools, these products, this is just, it's getting broader and broader and cooler and cooler. Okay, one thing that is on the horizon, it's getting really creepy, and I keep seeing a bunch of posts about it. AI is coming. AI and virtual digital sales. Okay, there are tools out there that you could literally write a blog by just typing 2 words into a screen.
Yeah.
Now, imagine an AI that types 2 words into your website and an AI salesperson begins to speak with them. You might consider that a threat. You might consider that an opportunity. We consider the digital pictures that are taken by Google or by any overheads, like either satellite or airplane photos or anything like that around homes, because I think a lot of you guys are home service folks, right? And the ability to generate estimates, the ability to generate value for clients without actually having to put something right there on the spot.
Yep.
So I see technology coming that I don't think that the salesperson will ever be obsolete.
No.
But I do see a lot of technology that, especially right now, could be used and leveraged to make your people better. And here's where I would also say, the person who can build the biggest and strongest network the fastest will always be the one relied on.
Mm-hmm.
If I got a guy, I won't even go to the internet.
Yep.
Okay. So as far as trends with employees and your salespeople, I see a lot of people starting to make the shift from trying to 1099 their salespeople and actually converting them over to W-2. This has been a little bit of a wave that's been coming. A couple of reasons for that. I think because of the cultural shift from millennials to Gen Z and the younger folks, they're looking at things going, I would like things like health benefits, and I would like things like retirement stuff. You can't really do that with 1099 folks. And so I'm seeing a lot of shift from people doing that. Plus, there's no secret that the IRS has 100% ramped up in order to go after 1099 people. I mean, they've said it, so I'm not saying anything controversial, right? And so a lot of companies are trying to protect their people by converting them into W-2, which does have an impact on their compensation structures from the standpoint that now they can actually offer their people more. So now if I can offer them a gas card, I can offer them a vehicle, I can offer them retirement, I can offer them health insurance, I can offer them child care, tuition help, all this kind of cool stuff, that is going to have an impact on the percentages that you offer. I was telling Sean earlier, I don't think commissions are going anywhere. I think that is the best way to compensate salespeople. And furthermore, good salespeople, that's what they want.
No, I think that's great. That's a lot of information. I appreciate you kind of like unpacking.
Run out of time, so
like,
it's kind of
no, that's amazing. I think we could go whole discussion on how AI is going to take over the over sales in the industry. As
we should just ask AI how it's going to do it. We won't even have to talk. It'll just.
I actually just used it to write a job title before this. I was like, what are some ideas? And it could spit out 9 different answers for me. So it is way smarter than I was like, it's not going to give me any crap. It's surprising. So, but no, thank you so much, Nathan, for your time here today. It is such an honor to have you on here. How can we kind of honor you in this time here? How can we reach out to you if we have questions? I'd love to kind of give your information out so people can reach you. Or reach Contractor Coach Pro or Top Rep.
I mean, we shouldn't be too hard to find. First of all, please find us on Facebook or on Instagram and Contractor Coach Pro, and join our group, like our page. I try to tell people that our podcast is probably one of the best free coaching platforms you're ever going to have. There's such great. Our podcast is called Contractor Radio. So please go check out our podcast. Our website, contractorcoachpro.com. You can also find information about Top Rep at topreptraining.com. If you're looking for me, feel free to hit me up. My email is easy. It's just coach@contractorcoachpro.com. You can also find me on social media. Send me a friend request, whatever.
Thank you again, Nathan, for your time, and
Thank
everyone
you.
has a fantastic rest of the day here.